Draug. It was a night in mid-March 1974. Gordon Rowe sat in a comfy chair in the fine arts room at the local public library and thought about murder. More specifically, he thought about how he might murder the man who was making his existence unbearable. Ab Jenkins. It had begun out of nowhere, but once started, had dominated his existence. He had simply been washing his hands in the library's downstairs washroom when the door slammed open and Jenkins stalked in. He stood directly behind Rowe, a weird throwback to the 1950s, with his slicked back hair, dead white skin, and black leather jacket. Rowe had seen him around town, but didn't know him, and didn't know him to speak to. "Are you a frat, eh?" Jenkins slurred, spraying Rowe with saliva and wafts of cheap wine. "I beg your pardon," Rowe said. He was a very polite young man, which did not serve him well in this instance. Jenkins began to poke him in the chest with a dirty fingernail. "I always see yous with books. Always with books, eh? Are you a frat boy?" Sorry. Rowe really had no idea what he was talking about. "Think you're better than me? Think you're better than me, eh? Think you're better than me!" Jenkins shouted, as he grabbed Rowe and threw him back against the sink. Rowe was bigger and bulkier than Jenkins, who was a slight man. But Jenkins was incredibly strong, and things might have ended badly if not for the timely arrival of library security. As he was being led out, Jenkins turned to Rowe and snarled, "I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you, frat boy." What followed was a nightmare. A few nights later, Rowe had been working on a social studies project in the library's reference department and had struck up a conversation with some girls from school. Some really cute girls from school. They all left the building together, and he was going to suggest that they go for coffee, or maybe even a beer, since they were all 18 or close enough, when Jenkins staggered out of the shadows and threw him against the cold concrete wall. "I'm going to lay a beating on yous, frat boy," he croaked. Rowe cowered instinctively. Let me go! Let me go! Please let me go! Please, sir, let me go!" he pleaded. "I'm not in a fraternity." The old security guard again broke things up and sent Jenkins on his way, threatening to call the police on him. But the damage had already been done. Rowe had been publicly humiliated. "See you later, Gordy," one of the girls called over her shoulder as they walked away. Gordy? It had been Gordon or Gord earlier on. The whole thing soon became a public joke, which everyone at school, except Rowe, found hilariously funny. Jenkins was always lingering near the school, forcing Rowe to leave by the side or back doors to avoid him, or else he followed him around, yelling insults and threats. The only good thing was that Jenkins walked slowly, with a distinct limp, so Rowe was able to easily get away. Worse, Jenkins was always hanging around the library at night, so Rowe was unable to go there, do his homework, and his marks started to suffer. Rowe had no one to confide in. His widowed mother was always working, and as they had only moved to town the previous September, he had no close friends, no real friends at all at school. And the teachers? Forget it. He didn't really understand why Jenkins hated him so much. Apparently he thought Rowe was in a fraternity. He wasn't and had no interest in being in one. A frat? And Rowe liked to read books, which Jenkins seemed to find insulting as well. Ab was probably an illiterate, a moron. And so Rowe lived alone with his problem and found himself obsessing about it 24 hours a day. But he had no solution. If only Jenkins would drop dead. Dead? Could he? Could he possibly? Jenkins hadn't been hanging around the library tonight, so Rowe was able to get inside, and now sat in a comfy chair in the fine arts room, listening to Ravel's bolero and contemplating how he might kill Ab Jenkins. Ravel's hypnotic music was slowly lulling him to sleep. He closed his eyes and saw a vision of gray-green waves rising and falling on a stormy sea. Dark waters, waves. The lake! And Rowe instantly had his plan and knew what he must do. The following evening found Rowe lingering around the entrance of the library, waiting for Jenkins to appear. Only a few people were around, entering or leaving the building, and no one gave the bookish Rowe a second chance. But if they had, they might have noticed that he was clutching something underneath his heavy winter coat. It was getting dark, and Rowe was starting to get impatient and worried. Where the hell was that cretin? Hey, frat. Jenkins came lurching out of the shadows, like Karis the mummy in the old Universal horror movies. And the chase was on. Rowe calmly strolled across Lakeshore Road, then down Navy Street, past the park, and onto the pier, which jutted out into the lake. Jenkins shambled along at a distance, hollering abuse, and Rowe became concerned lest he attract unwanted attention. But he found he needn't worry. There was no one about. No one about on this chilly evening. It was perfect. At the very end of the pier, a white lighthouse sat atop a concrete base, which had been painted fire engine red for visibility, like a red velvet cake with a humongous white candle on top. Anyone on the far lake side of the concrete base was invisible to anyone on the shore, and as soon as he had reached it, Rowe slipped around the base and out of sight. He took the bicycle pump from under his coat and waited. Rowe no longer rode his bike. Too undignified. And after tonight, he wouldn't be needing the pump anymore. After all, it didn't pay to keep evidence. The only sounds were the waves lapping against the sides of the pier and the shuffling and muttering of Jenkins as he slowly limped towards the base of the lighthouse. Closer, closer, closer. And then he was there, stumbling into sight, and Rowe lashed out with the bike pump, striking Jenkins soundly on the side of the head. Jenkins staggered back, throwing up his hands and arms to protect his head, as Rowe lashed his tormentor again and again with his hard steel club, forcing him back towards the edge of the pier, forcing him back, forcing him with a shriek. Jenkins went over the side, hitting the surface of the lake with a huge splash. Panting, Rowe dropped the blood-stained bike pump onto the concrete and grabbed for the side of the lighthouse base. Had he got blood on him? On his clothes? Just then he noticed, at the point of the pier where Jenkins had fallen, white scrabbling worms, 8 of them, which he suddenly realized were Jenkins' fingers. He was trying to crawl up out of the water. Forcing himself to stay calm, Rowe walked to the edge and looked down. Jenkins' cadaverous face, which looked like it belonged to a man already dead, stared up at him beseechingly, his thin lips mouthing the words, "Help me, help me, help me." Without hesitation, Rowe slammed his foot down on the desperate fingers, hard, and Jenkins let go. Rowe saw Jenkins' fish-belly white face staring up at him from beneath the dark waters, and then he was gone. Gordon Rowe felt both a sense of relief and a sense of exultation wash over him. Ab Jenkins would trouble him no more. With a yell of triumph, he gathered up the bike pump and threw it into the dark lake. 100 yards beyond the end of the pier, a frantic human figure broke the surface of the water, fists clenched, in rage and agony. "Jenkins? Jenkins?" And then it was gone. Gordon Rowe leaned against the base of the lighthouse for nearly 15 minutes before silently turning to walk home. A light rain, almost a mist, had begun to fall. Good. It would wash away any bloodstains. This story is to be continued.